I was only 8 when I discovered my foster parents were filming me, the true reason they adopted me. Hi there, my dear friends. My name is Clara, but everyone calls me Grandma C. I'm 74 years old and was born here in Louisville, Kentucky back in 1950. Today, I'm going to share a story I've kept in my heart for over 60 years. A story I've never told, not even to my own children. If you're watching this now, please leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel because your support gives me the strength to talk about things that still hurt to remember. Before I begin, I have wonderful news. The team from this channel asked me to let you know that we've reached our goal of 20,000 subscribers this week. To thank all you wonderful people across America, we're giving away $250. To participate, you need to be subscribed to Grandparents' Tales, turn on notifications, like this video, and comment something about your life, how many children you have, where you're watching from, anything from your heart. The drawing will be at the end of the month, so don't miss out. My story begins quite differently from most children's. I was adopted when I was only 4 years old, back in 1954. My biological mother was very young, just 16 when she had me, and couldn't raise me herself. She left me at a children's home right here in Louisville, with a little note saying she wanted me to have a better life than she could give me. I still remember the day I met Mrs. Patricia and Mr. Henry, my adoptive parents. It was a Saturday morning, and the sun was shining bright like only a Kentucky summer can be. Mrs. Patricia was a tall woman with black hair always pulled back in a tight bun, and she had dark eyes that seemed to look right through you. Mr. Henry was shorter, a quiet man who worked at a fabric store downtown. "This is Clara," said the woman who ran the children's home. "She's a well-behaved, obedient little girl." I remember Mrs. Patricia looking at me strangely, as if she was evaluating me, measuring me up. She ran her hand through my hair, lifted my chin to look at my face, even checked my teeth. At the time, I thought it was affection, but today I understand it was something else. "She'll do," was all she said. Mr. Henry didn't say anything, just nodded his head. He always had an old camera hanging around his neck, one of those old film cameras that made noise when taking pictures. He said he was a photographer in his spare time, that he liked to capture special family moments. American Foster Care System, 1950s, 10 Resultados Foster Care, a history. National Association for Legal Support, Professionals, NAILS.org, Adoption History, Fostering and Foster Care, Wanadoo, the Children's Home Society of Virginia, Exploring the 1940s, and 1950s Children's Home Society of Virginia, shaza.org, or Raising Government Children, A History of Foster Care and the American Welfare State on jstorystore.org, Foster Care in the United States, Wikipedia, wikipedia.org, or Child Welfare Policy and Practice in the United States, 1950, 2000 Crosscurrents Family Law and Policy in the U.S. and England, Oxford, academicup.com, Life in Care. During the 1950s, Foster Focus, MagCom, Foster Care Background and History. Findlaw.com, born and adopted in the 1950s, What We're Learning from Project Search and Reunion, amarafamily.org. Can someone give me a brief history of the formation of the foster care system in the United States? More specifically, why it was formed in place of orphanages? Quora.com. Thank you for the search results. I'll continue adapting the script to American English with us. Cultural references, taking into account information about foster care in the United States during the 1950s. Their house was on Oak Street, a large corner house with a backyard and a dark room that Mr. Henry used to develop his photographs. The smell in that room was strong chemical, and I was afraid to go in there. In the first few days, everything seemed normal. Mrs. Patricia gave me new clothes, enrolled me in school, showed me where my room would be. It was a small room, but it was all mine, with a twin bed and an old wooden dresser. I thought I had finally found a real family, but within the first few weeks, I began to notice strange things. Mrs. Patricia had very specific habits. She insisted on bathing me every day, even though I was already 4 years old and knew how to wash myself. "Little girls need to be clean," she would say, scrubbing my body with a force that hurt. Especially you, coming from where you did. I didn't understand what she meant by coming from where you did. I was just a child who lost her biological parents like so many others. But in her mind, I was different. I was inherently dirty. The baths became increasingly strange. She would spend a long time washing me, touching places that made me feel uncomfortable, always saying it was for my own good. She started giving me baths with very hot water, saying it was to get all the dirt off. "Stop crying," she would say, when I complained that the water was burning. "You need to learn to be a clean, proper girl." And Mr. Henry, he always appeared during bath time. He said it was to help, but he just stood there with that camera around his neck, watching me in a way that made me afraid. Sometimes I heard the camera's quiet click, but when I looked, he was busy with something else. Over time, Mrs. Patricia's care intensified. She began examining me every night before bed, saying it was to make sure I was healthy. She touched my body, made me stay in strange positions, always with the excuse that it was maternal care. "A mother has to take care of her daughter," she would repeat. "You didn't have a mother before, so you don't know how it is, but I'll teach you everything." Mr. Henry was always nearby during these times. Sometimes he would enter the room pretending he was looking for something, but I noticed he was watching. The camera was always there, hanging from his neck, swinging when he moved. When I turned 6, things got much worse. Mrs. Patricia started, taking me to her and Mr. Henry's bedroom, saying I was going to learn to be a woman. What happened in that room, I can't describe in detail, because even today, it makes me sick to remember. She did things to me that no mother should do to a daughter, things that hurt me inside and out. And Mr. Henry was always there, always, with that camera. I realized he wasn't just watching anymore, he was filming. I saw him adjusting buttons, positioning the camera, aiming it in our direction. The sound of the film rolling was quiet, but I could hear it. "Be quiet," Mrs. Patricia would whisper in my ear when I cried. "This is normal. All girls go through this. You're special. That's why we chose you." Special. That word echoed in my head. Was I special because I was adopted? Or was I special for another reason I didn't understand yet? The nights became my worst nightmare. Every time I heard footsteps in the hallway, every time my bedroom door opened, my heart would race. Sometimes they came together, sometimes it was just her. But Mr. Henry always appeared with that camera, always recording everything. "You have to understand," Mrs. Patricia would say, "we do this because you need it. You're not our blood, so you have to learn differently." It was then that I began to understand that my adoption hadn't been out of love. They didn't want me as a daughter. They wanted me for something else, something I still didn't fully comprehend, but knew was wrong. At school, I tried to tell a teacher. I approached her after class and said my mother was hurting me. She looked at me with pity and said, "Honey, your mother adopted you out of kindness. You should be grateful. Sometimes we think parents are being harsh, but it's because they want what's best for us." No one believed me. Or maybe they didn't want to believe. Mrs. Patricia and Mr. Henry were respected in town, went to church, had a normal social life. Who would believe an adopted girl against a good couple? At home, the situation only got worse. Mrs. Patricia started drugging me slightly before the abuse, giving me tea that she said was to calm me down. I would become half asleep, half awake, with no strength to react. And Mr. Henry took advantage of these moments to film up close, getting angles he couldn't get before. "She looks prettier this way," I heard him say once to Mrs. Patricia. "More natural, pretty, natural." I was a child being abused, and he thought it was pretty. Those words marked me forever, made me understand that for them I wasn't a person. I was an object, something to be used and recorded. At 8 years old, I made a discovery that changed everything. I was playing in the yard when the ball fell near the window of Mr. Henry's darkroom. Peeking through a crack, I saw him working with several film reels, putting some in a special box. There were dozens of them, all numbered with dates. I recognized some dates. They were the days of the most intense abuse. Mr. Henry wasn't just filming for his own pleasure. He was organizing, cataloging, storing everything as if it were a precious collection. That night, I pretended to be asleep when they came to my room. I heard Mrs. Patricia say, "She's growing up fast. Soon, she'll start asking harder questions." "We still have a few years," Mr. Henry replied, "and the material we already have will last a long time." Material? They talked about me as material, as if I were a product they were manufacturing, documenting, storing for future use. It was at that moment that I understood I needed to escape no matter how, no matter where. But I needed to get out of that house, before it was too late. At 8 years old, I began planning my escape, knowing it would be my only chance to survive that hell. Fear took hold of me in a way I had never felt before. It wasn't just fear of what they did to me. It was fear of what they might do with those films. Fear that other children might go through the same. Fear that I would never escape that nightmare. Each day that passed, each night they came to my room, I felt a piece of me die. The girl I was, who dreamed of having a real family, was being replaced by a frightened, broken child who just wanted to disappear. But deep down, a small flame still resisted, the will to live, to be free, to find someone who would truly love me. And it was this flame that gave me strength for what I would do next, for the hardest decision an 8-year-old child could make. From ages 8 to 12, my life turned into a hell that seemed endless. You can't imagine what it's like to wake up every day knowing you'll suffer, knowing no one will save you, knowing you're just a toy in the hands of sick people. After I discovered the films, everything got even heavier. Mrs. Patricia noticed I was different, more resistant, and it made her furious. The abuse increased, became more violent, more frequent. It was as if she wanted to break me completely, turn me into a doll with no will of her own. "You're getting rebellious," she would say while hurting me. "Adopted girls can't have their own will. You have to be grateful for what you get." Mr. Henry, in turn, became even bolder with the filming. He bought new equipment, a 16mm camera that made less noise, tripods he hid all over the house, even special lamps he installed in my room without me understanding why. Only later did I realize it was all to get better, clearer, more professional images. "It needs to look natural," he would whisper while adjusting the lenses, as if it were spontaneous, as if a child being violated could be spontaneous. But in his sick mind, it was art. It was something special he was creating. In 1962, when I was 12, things changed frighteningly. Mr. Henry started leaving the house frequently carrying a small briefcase. He always came back with money, lots of money, which he hid in a box in their wardrobe. One day, I heard him talking to Mrs. Patricia. "The people from Atlanta want more material. They're paying well for footage with young girls. Child exploitation rings." 1960s United States, 10 resultados. U.S. History of Sexual Exploitation of Children. News Women at Risk. International War. International Org. Child Sexual Abuse in the United Kingdom. Wikipedia. Wikipedia.org. In 1962. Matters in the History of Clinicians. Responses to Abused and Neglected Children. Journal of Ethics. American Medical Association. amason.org. Or Child Sex Trafficking Ring. Dismantled. Federal Bureau of Investigation. FBI Gov. Child Sex Rings. A behavioral analysis for criminal justice professionals handling cases of child sexual exploitation. Office of Justice Programs. OJ.gov. Typology of Sex Rings Exploiting Children from Child. Pornography and Sex Rings P5181, 1984, and W. Burgess and Marianne L. Clark. Ed. CNCJ 96305, Office of Justice Programs, OJP.gov. Child Abuse Background and History, FindLawFindLaw.com. Child Sex Ring, Wikipedia, Wikipedia.org. Child Welfare, Child Protection and Sexual Abuse, 1918-1990, History and Policy.org. Rodale Child Sex Abuse Ring Wikipedia, wikipedia.org, or People from Atlanta. They were selling the recordings. I now understood that this wasn't just abuse, it was a business. They adopted me specifically for this purpose, to use me as a product in a network of people who consumed this type of material. I was merchandise, not a daughter. The equipment at home increased. Mr. Henry set up a real improvised studio in the basement with fixed cameras, professional lighting, and even different scenarios. He forced me to stay down there for hours recording scenes that he later edited and sold. "You have to look like you enjoy it," he would say. "If you cry too much, it ruins the film. How could a 12-year-old child enjoy being violated?" But they drugged me more and more with medications that left me confused, disoriented. Sometimes I couldn't even remember what had happened, just woke up hurting and ashamed. Mrs. Patricia became even more cruel. She began to torture me psychologically, saying I was dirty, that no real family would want me, that I should be grateful for having a roof and food. "Do you know what happens to girls like you on the street?" she would ask while hitting me. "You'll starve to death. They'll use you even worse. Here, at least you have a house, food, clothes." I believed her. At 12, after 8 years of torture, I really believed there was no better place for me, that this was my destiny, my punishment for being born without parents. School became my only refuge. But even there, I couldn't concentrate. My grades plummeted. I was always sleepy because of the medications, and the other kids started avoiding me. I smelled of the chemicals from the photo lab, always had strange marks on my body, and my behavior was increasingly apathetic. "Clara is very strange," I heard one teacher comment to another. "She seems like a traumatized child," but no one investigated. No one asked questions. Mrs. Patricia was respected in the community, religiously attended church, always portrayed herself as a dedicated mother who had adopted a troubled girl out of charity. "Poor Patricia," the neighbors would comment. "She took in a difficult child to raise. Must be a lot of work. Difficult, troubled." I was seen as the problem, not the victim, and that made me feel even more guilty, even more alone. In 1963, something happened that made me even more desperate. Mr. Henry brought other men to the house, older men, well-dressed, who arrived always at night with suitcases and equipment. They didn't just film, they participated in the abuse. "She's still young," I heard one of them say. "She'll produce a lot of good material." "She's docile, too," Mr. Henry replied. "Well-trained, trained as if I were a circus animal. They talked about me as if I wasn't there, as if I couldn't hear, as if I wasn't human." The sessions with these men were even worse. They hurt me in ways I can't even describe here. They filmed everything with multiple cameras from all possible angles. They made technical comments about lighting, framing, as if they were producing a normal film. "Get a close-up of her face crying," one would say to another. "That sells well, sells well." My suffering, my tears, my despair were valuable products in their market. The more I suffered, the more money they made. I started having dark thoughts. I thought about hurting myself on purpose, ending it all at once, but I was even afraid of death. Would they accept me in heaven? Would God forgive a girl as dirty as me? It was during this time that I began to pay more attention to their conversations. I heard names of cities, people, values. I understood that there was a large network of people involved in this, that what was happening to me was also happening to other children. The material from Nashville is selling well. I heard Mr. Henry talking on the phone one night. That blonde girl is making a profit. Another girl, another child suffering like me. How many were we? How many fake families were spread across the country adopting children for this horrible purpose? In 1964, when I turned 14, I realized my body was changing. And this made Mrs. Patricia even more aggressive. She said I was getting spoiled, that soon I wouldn't be useful for what they needed anymore. "Older girls don't sell as much," she complained. "We have to make the most of it while she still looks like a child." The pressure increased. The sessions became more frequent, more intense. They wanted to make the most before I passed the point. That's when I had an idea. If they thought I was getting too old, maybe they would stop watching me so closely. Maybe I could get a chance to escape. I began to observe everything more carefully. The schedules, the routines, where they kept the keys. When they left the house together, I pretended to be more submissive, more obedient, so they would lower their guard. One day, searching the house while they were out, I found a box in their wardrobe full of letters. They were correspondences, with people from various cities, arranging values, dates, types of material. I saw my name in several of them, descriptions of my body, of my age, as if it were a catalog. But it was in one of these letters that I found precious information. The address of my Uncle Tom, brother of my adoptive mother. In an old letter, Mrs. Patricia complained to someone about him. My brother Tom keeps questioning how we treat the girl. He's always complaining, saying we're too harsh. Good thing he lives far away in Lexington. Lexington. My uncle lived in Lexington, just 80 miles away, and from the tone of the letter, he cared about me, thought I was mistreated. Maybe he was my only chance for salvation. I kept this information like a treasure. Uncle Tom cared about me. There was someone in the world who questioned what they did, who thought it was wrong. For the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope. I began to plan my escape more seriously. I studied the bus schedules to Lexington, saved every penny I could steal, memorized my uncle's address. I knew I would have only one chance, and if I failed, they would probably kill me. The plan began to take shape in my head. It was risky, desperate, but it was my only hope of getting out of that hell alive. At 14, after 10 years of torture, I was finally going to try to reclaim my freedom. The decision was made. At the next opportunity, when they lowered their guard, I would run away no matter what happened after. Anything would be better than continuing to be used as an object, as merchandise, as a disposable product in a disgusting business. My childhood had been stolen, my innocence destroyed, but my will to live still resisted, and it was this will that gave me courage for what I would do next. The year 1965 brought a discovery that changed everything. I had just turned 15 when I found the key to Mr. Henry's photographic laboratory. He always kept that place locked, but that day, after a heavy drinking session, he forgot the key on the kitchen table. My heart was racing when I opened that door. What I saw inside left me breathless. It wasn't just a few scattered films. It was a complete archive, organized like a library of horror. Hundreds of film cans stacked, each labeled with dates, ages, and details that made me feel sick. Clara, 4 years, first session, I read on a label. Clara, 8 years, special client from Nashville. Clara, 12 years, double session with visitors. Each can represented a piece of my stolen childhood, of my shattered dignity. But the worst was yet to come. On a separate shelf, there were cans with other names. Mary, 6 years, new acquisition. Joseph, 9 years, preferred client. Anna, 7 years, first experience. It wasn't just me. There were other children, other names, other lives being destroyed. I realized that Mr. Henry and Mrs. Patricia were part of something much bigger, a network that spread throughout the South. I also saw accounting books, notebooks where they recorded values, delivery dates, customer names. This was a thriving business. I saw numbers that scared me. Thousands of dollars per film, specific orders from demanding customers, even international orders. Client from New York requests material with curly-haired girl, I read in a note. Pay 50% more if virgin. Export to Canada. Preference for boys between 8 and 10 years old. My legs trembled. How many children were suffering because of this horror machine? How many fake families existed adopting children just for this purpose? That's when I found something that gave me hope and despair at the same time. In a locked drawer, which I managed to open with a hairpin, there was a folder with documents about my adoption. I discovered that my biological mother hadn't abandoned me because she couldn't care for me. She had been deceived. Reading the letters, I understood that Mrs. Patricia had approached my mother when she was pregnant, offering help, promising I would have a better life. My mother, naive and desperate, believed her. But there was more. "The girl has the ideal profile," said a letter Mrs. Patricia wrote to someone. "Curly hair, big eyes, fair skin will yield a lot of quality material. The biological mother is too young to suspect anything. Ideal profile." They chose me as if choosing a product at the market. They analyzed my physical characteristics, my vulnerable situation, calculated how much profit I could give. At that moment, sitting on the floor of that cursed laboratory, surrounded by evidence of a decade of horror, something inside me changed definitively. It wasn't just anger or fear anymore. It was a cold, calculating determination. They had used me, sold me, tortured me, but they weren't going to completely destroy me. I began to photograph everything with a small camera I found in a drawer. I didn't know how to use it well, but I managed to take some photos of the documents, the accounting books, the film labels. I sensed that this would be important later. In the following days, I observed their every move with different eyes. I saw Mr. Henry checking the cans, separating material for delivery, speaking on the phone in codes that I now understood. I saw Mrs. Patricia counting money, planning special sessions, discussing renewing the stock. "Clara is getting old," I heard her say in a phone conversation. "We need to think about replacement. Do you have any indication of a children's home with new material?" New material? Another child would go through what I went through. Another life would be destroyed to feed that disgusting machine. And I couldn't allow it. That's when I made a decision that changed everything. I wouldn't just run away, I would destroy that business before leaving. I would make them pay for everything they did to me and to other children. I began to plan meticulously. For weeks I observed their routine, memorized where they kept the keys, studied the hours of most movement on the street. I knew I would have only one chance and couldn't make a mistake. The plan was simple, but dangerous. On a night when they would go out together, something that happened at least once a month for meetings with clients in Nashville, I would put sleeping pills in the water they always drank before bed. While they slept, I would destroy all the material, take the money, and run away to Lexington to find my Uncle Tom. I got the sleeping pills by stealing little by little from the pharmacy where Mrs. Patricia bought the medications they gave me. I pretended to be feeling sick several times, and while she bought medicine for me, I would take other things and hide them under my clothes. In May 1965, the opportunity came. Mr. Henry received an urgent phone call. An important client from Nashville wanted a meeting that same night. They would have to travel and would only return the next morning. "You stay quiet here," Mrs. Patricia told me before leaving. "We're going to lock the whole house. If you try to run away, the neighbors will see and bring you back, and then it will be worse for you." I waited for them to leave, waited for the sound of the car to fade away, waited until I was sure they wouldn't come back. Then I began to execute my plan. First, I went to the laboratory. I began to systematically destroy everything. I broke the film cans, burned the documents, destroyed the equipment. Each film I destroyed was a child who might be spared more suffering. I found a list of addresses of other suppliers in the network. I kept it with me. Someday maybe I could report them all. I saw names of respectable people in society, politicians, businessmen, even members of the clergy. The network was bigger and more powerful than I imagined. I took all the money I found. It was many thousands of dollars hidden in various places around the house. It wasn't theft, it was recovery. That money came from my suffering, my tears, my stolen childhood. Then I went to the kitchen to prepare the final surprise. I mixed a generous amount of sleeping pills into the jar of water they always drank before bed. I didn't want to kill them. I wanted them to wake up and find everything destroyed, to feel the despair I felt so many times. But the sleeping pills were just part of the plan. I left a letter on the table telling everything they did, naming clients, describing the network. Even if they didn't read it, someone would when they were found. Around midnight, I heard the car arriving. My heart raced, but I kept calm. I went up to my room, pretended to be asleep, and waited. I heard them come in, commenting on the meeting, complaining about the heat. I heard the sound of water being served, of chairs being dragged, then silence. I waited 2 more hours to make sure the sleeping pills had taken effect. I went downstairs slowly, stepping only on the parts of the floor that didn't make noise. They were passed out in the kitchen, she with her head on the table, he fallen in the chair. I took the suitcase I had prepared with my few clothes and all the money I found. I also took the photos I had taken of the documents and the list of addresses. They were the evidence that might one day help me get justice. Before leaving, I did one last thing. I wrote with red lipstick on the living room wall, "You will pay for everything." I didn't sign it, but they would know who it was. I left the house at 4 in the morning. The town was still asleep, only a few workers beginning to move through the streets. I walked to the bus station, bought a ticket to Lexington on the first morning bus. While waiting for the bus, I felt a mixture of terror and liberation. Terror, because I didn't know what awaited me, if my uncle would receive me, if they would manage to find me. Liberation, because for the first time in 11 years, no one knew where I was. No one could hurt me. The bus arrived at 6 Mass in the morning. I got on trembling, not just from cold, but from anxiety. I looked out the window and saw Louisville moving away, that city that had been my hell for so long. The trip to Lexington took 2 hours, but seemed like an eternity. At each stop, I feared seeing Mr. Henry or Mrs. Patricia appear, ready to take me back. But they didn't appear. When I arrived in Lexington, I didn't even know where to begin. I had only an old address and the hope that my uncle still lived there, that he still cared about me. I took a taxi and gave the address. The driver looked at me curiously. A 15-year-old girl alone with a suitcase and the face of someone who had gone through something terrible. "Are you okay, girl?" he asked. "Now I will be," I answered, and it was the first time in years that I felt that might be true. The taxi stopped at a simple middle-class house with a well-tended garden in front. I paid for the ride with the money I had taken, money that was technically mine, paid with my suffering. I knocked on the door with my heart pounding. A middle-aged woman answered, looked at me with surprise and curiosity. "I'm Clara," I said simply, "Tom's niece. I need to talk to him." Her expression changed immediately. I saw recognition, concern, even a bit of relief. "My God, girl," she said, pulling me inside. "Tom has been worried about you for years. Come in quickly." When my uncle appeared in the living room, a man of about 50 years with kind eyes and a graying beard, I began to cry. It wasn't crying of sadness. It was crying of relief, of hope, of finally having found someone who might see me as a person, not as an object. "Clara," he said, hugging me. "Thank God you're here. I knew something was wrong in that house." Years later, I learned that Mr. Henry died in prison in 1978 in a fight with other inmates. Mrs. Patricia was released in 1985, sick and broken. She tried to contact me once, but I refused to see her. She died alone in 1990. I didn't feel joy at this news. I didn't feel anything. They had already become irrelevant in my life, ghosts of a past I had overcome. Today at 74, I have 7 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren. I've built a full life filled with love and purpose. I worked at the print shop for 30 years, became a partner in the business, helped modernize everything. Brian passed away in 2010, but we had 39 wonderful years together. He taught me that true love is patience, understanding, respect. He helped me heal wounds I thought would never scar. Looking back, I see that my story isn't just about survival. It's about transformation. I took the deepest pain and transformed it into strength to protect others. into love to give to my children, into wisdom to guide those who need it. If you've made it this far watching my story, thank you for listening with an open heart. I know it's not easy to hear accounts like this, but it's important that these stories be told. The real rebuilding of my life began after my children were born. Until then, I had survived, adapted, created a safe routine. But it was only when I held Grace in my arms for the first time in 1973 that I understood the true meaning of the word, rebirth. I looked at that perfect little face, at those little eyes that looked at me with absolute trust and made a promise that echoed in my heart. You will never go through what Mommy went through, never. But with that promise also came an enormous responsibility. How do you raise healthy children when you yourself were broken so early? How do you teach about love when you learned about fear? How do you talk about trust when your own childhood was a betrayal? In the first months after Grace's birth, I had panic attacks. I saw evil where it didn't exist. I distrusted any adult who approached her. Brian would find me crying in the middle of the night, checking if she was breathing for the 10th time that night. "Clara, you need help," he told me kindly. "You can't carry all this alone." That's when I started therapy with Dr. Roberts, a psychiatrist in Lexington who had experience with trauma. At first I resisted. I thought talking about the past would only hurt me more. "What's past is past," I would say. "Why dig into it again?" "Because it hasn't completely passed," he would respond. "It's all in here influencing how you see the world, how you relate, how you raise your children." It took me 2 years to accept that he was right. 2 years watching my fear contaminate Grace's upbringing, watching my distrust harm my marriage, watching my past steal my present. Therapy was painful but liberating. I learned that carrying trauma doesn't mean being a victim forever. It means having scars that tell a story of survival, not defeat. "You are not what they did to you." Dr. Roberts would repeat, "You are what you chose to do afterward, and I chose to live. I chose to love. I chose to be a mother, wife, professional. I chose to transform pain into purpose." When Stephen was born, in 1975, I was a different mother. Still protective, but not paranoid. Still careful, but not suffocating. I had learned to separate my legitimate fears from the fears that came from trauma. With Nina in 1978, I finally felt complete as a mother. I could play without anxiety. I could leave her with other adults without panicking. I taught about safety without transmitting terror. "Mom, why do you always talk about not letting anyone touch your private parts?" Grace asked me one day at 6 years old. I took a deep breath. It was the question I knew would come, but still didn't know how to answer because our body is ours, I explained. And only we decide who can touch it. If someone tries to touch where they shouldn't, you scream, run, and tell mom or dad. Even if it's someone we know, especially if it's someone we know. I taught my children about consent from an early age. I taught that there are no special secrets between adults and children. I taught that they could always tell me everything without fear of punishment or scolding. At the print shop where I worked, I became a reference for female employees who were going through difficult situations. I didn't tell my complete story, but offered an ear, advice, support. "Mrs. Clara has a special way of understanding our pain," the girls would comment. In 1985, when Nina was 7, something radically changed my life. A social worker from Louisville sought me out asking for help with cases of child abuse. "We learned about your story through the trial records," she explained. "We need someone who understands, who can help other children." My first impulse was to refuse. Why stir up that wound that had already healed? But then I thought about the children who were suffering now at that moment the same way I suffered. I started slowly visiting children's homes, talking to children, removed from abusive homes. Seeing those frightened little eyes, that distrust I knew so well, awakened something in me. "I know what you went through," I would say to each child. "And I know it seems like it will never get better. But it will. I am proof that it will. Some listened to me in silence. Others cried. Some even smiled, perhaps for the first time in a long time. And each smile I drew out was a victory against the evil that had tried to destroy me. In 1987, I founded the Phoenix Institute with 3 other people, an NGO dedicated to helping children who were victims of sexual abuse. We used my house as the initial headquarters, then got donations to rent our own space. "Why Phoenix?" a journalist asked. Me at the inauguration. "Because that's what we do," I replied. "We die as victims and are reborn as survivors." The work at the Institute gave me a purpose I had never felt before. Each child we helped was a silent revenge against Mr. Henry and Mrs. Patricia. They tried to destroy me, but I was saving others. We developed our own methodologies, trained professionals, created care protocols. In 5 years, we had already helped more than 200 children and their families. "You've become a national reference, Uncle," Tom told me proudly, showing an article about our work in a Washington, D.C. magazine. I, who at 8 years old felt like the most useless creature in the world, was now being called to give lectures, consultations, training. The girl who thought she had no value was now helping to create public policies for child protection. In 1990, at 40, I decided to go to college. I studied psychology, finally understanding scientifically what I had experienced in practice. "It's never too late to learn," I would tell my children, who were already teenagers. "Mom will prove it." Studying was challenging. Balancing family, work at the print shop, the institute, and college required iron discipline. But each new piece of knowledge was one more tool to help other people. During the course, I wrote my thesis on resilience in victims of child sexual abuse. I used my own story as a case study, analyzing the factors that allowed me to rebuild myself. "Your research can help thousands of people," my advisor said. "Have you thought about publishing a book?" The idea scared me. Completely expose my story for the whole world to read. But then I thought about how many people could benefit, how many could find hope. In 1995, I published Rising from the Ashes, A Journey of Survival and Overcoming. The book became a reference in the field, being used in universities and training. Courses? The lectures multiplied. I traveled across the entire United States telling my story, teaching about resilience, showing that it's possible to overcome even the deepest traumas. "How did you manage to forgive?" They always ask me. "I didn't forgive to free them," I would answer. "I forgave to free myself." Forgiveness isn't about the aggressor. It's about the victim regaining their peace. In 2000, when I turned 50, I took stock of my life. 3 grown children, grandchildren arriving, a solid marriage of almost 30 years, a profession that fulfilled me, an institute that had already helped more than 1,000 children. "Look what God did with your life," Aunt Ruth, now quite elderly, told me. "He took that hurt little girl and transformed her into a warrior." Warrior. The word moved me. I, who for so many years saw myself as a victim, was now seen as a warrior. My grandchildren started arriving in the early 2000s. Seeing those little ones playing in my yard, protected, loved, free, was the definitive proof that the cycle had been broken. "Grandma C, tell a story," they would ask. And I would tell stories of brave princesses, of girls who faced dragons and won, of children who found families that truly loved them. Stories that were deep down fantastic versions of my own journey. In 2005, I received the title of Honorary Citizen of Kentucky for services rendered to child protection. In my speech, I looked at the packed audience and said, 40 years ago, I was a broken girl who didn't believe I deserved to live. Today I am here, mother, grandmother, professional, citizen. If I could do it, anyone can. Never give up on yourselves." The audience rose in applause that lasted 5 minutes. Tears ran down my face, but they were tears of gratitude, not pain. Brian passed away in 2010 after 39 years of marriage. It was difficult, but I was no longer the fragile girl who depended totally on others to feel safe. I had become a complete, whole woman. "You'll be okay," he whispered in his last days. "You're the strongest person I know." And I was okay. I continued the work at the Institute, continued the lectures, continued taking care of the grandchildren who kept coming. The years passed, bringing more joys than sorrows. I saw my children graduate, get married, give me wonderful grandchildren. Grace became a teacher, Stephen an engineer, Nina a psychologist, inspired by my journey of healing. "Mom, you saved our entire family," Nina told me on her graduation day. "You broke a cycle that could have repeated for generations." In 2015, I officially retired from the Institute, but continued as a volunteer consultant. I wanted more time for my grandchildren to travel, to finally rest a little. It was my oldest great-granddaughter, Katie, who introduced me to this internet thing. She was 15 and lived glued to her phone watching videos of people telling stories. "Grandma C, you should tell your story on a channel like this," she said one day. "There are a lot of people who need to hear what you went through, how you overcame it." At first I thought it was crazy. Me, a 70-year-old lady talking to a camera. But Katie insisted, showed me how other people my age were using these platforms to share experiences. "Look, Grandma, there's a channel that gathers stories from grandparents from all over America. Each one tells their life, their challenges, their triumphs. You would be perfect there." She showed me some videos, and I was impressed. They were real, touching stories of women who had gone through difficulties and managed to rebuild themselves. Some had stories of poverty, others of domestic violence, others of family losses. Maybe it's a way to help more people, I thought. It took me a year to decide. I talked to my children who supported me completely. I talked to my current therapist who thought the idea was excellent for my healing process. Telling your story publicly can be the closure you need. She said a way to definitively transform your pain into hope for others. So at 74, here I am, nervous as never before, but determined to share my journey with you who are watching me. Folks, before continuing, I want to remind you about our $250 giveaway. We've already reached 20,000 subscribers. What immense joy. To participate, you need to be subscribed to Grandparents' Tales. Turn on notifications, like this video, and comment something about your life in the comments. It can be how many children you have, where you're watching from, anything from your heart. The drawing will be at the end of the month. Today, looking at everything I've lived through, I can say with certainty, we are much stronger than we imagine. Inside each of us is a strength that we don't even know ourselves, but that appears when we need it most. I learned that trauma is not a death sentence for dreams. It's a big, scary obstacle, but one that can be overcome with help, time, and determination. Each wound can become a source of healing for others. I learned that family isn't just blood. It's who chooses to love you, protect you, support you. Uncle Tom and Aunt Ruth saved me by being true family when I needed it most. I learned that our greatest revenge against those who hurt us is to live fully, be happy, fulfill our dreams. Each day of genuine joy is a victory against the evil that tried to destroy us. If you're going through a difficult time, whatever it may be, I want you to know you are stronger than you imagine. The 15-year-old girl who fled that dawn is now a great-grandmother of 3 little angels, a mentor to hundreds of people, a book author, a recognized speaker. But my greatest pride is simple. I broke the cycle. The children in my family grow up loved, protected, free. Evil tried to destroy me at 4 years old, but I was reborn at 15, and I continue to be reborn every day. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it won't hurt. But I am saying it's possible. If I could do it, you can too. Seek help when you need it. Be patient with yourself. Use your pain as fuel, not as an excuse. And most importantly, never give up on yourself. Life is too precious a gift to be wasted because of those who hurt us. Let's live. Let's love. Let's be happy. That's our best revenge. Showing that we are unbeatable when we decide to be reborn. Thank you for listening to me this far, my dears. Each of you who reached the end of this story carries a little piece of my healing. You are part of my miracle of being here whole telling all this. Subscribe to Grandparents' Tales, leave your like, comment your story in the comments. Together we are stronger. Together we can show the world that no trauma is greater than our capacity to be reborn. A kiss to the heart of each of you, and see you in the next video. This grandma here has a lot more story to tell, a lot more hope to share.